Hi, Dane. Thank you so much for being here. We're so grateful we get to interview you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Yep, sure. So my name is Dane Cobain. I am a writer, publisher, editor, a man of many hats, I suppose. I write in a variety of different genres. I'm one of those people where most people separate different genres into different pen names. I don't do that. I just chuck everything out under the same pen name, which causes a huge marketing headache. But I'm mostly known probably for horror and mystery, which are the two that don't really particularly go well together. But yeah, those are the two main genres that I focus in on. And yeah, I do editing. I'm a freelance writer as well. Do a bit of music, do a bit of poetry. As I say, a man of many hats.
Love that. I would love if you could tell us what your books are about.
Yeah, sure. So, well, as I say, because I write across a bunch of different genres, it's kind of hard to say what they are about as a whole. I will say most of them have kind of a theme of like technology, technological change, and kind of how that affects us as a society. And that's true whether it's the horror, again, whether it's the mystery, even some of the sort of the nonfiction stuff I've done. My most sort of well-known books really are probably my mystery series, which is the Leipfold series, which I describe as like it's like if Miss Marple had Twitter. That's how I describe it. So you've got like this sort of grizzled sort of late 30s private investigator guy with his sort of young technologically savvy assistant solving crimes that quite often have like again a technological component, like there's an app or there's something happening on the dark web or whatever it might be. So that's the Lightfold series, which currently there are 3 books out in that with a 4th one to come soon. And then with my horror, it does depend. Again, there's usually some form of like technology involved there. Probably from the horror side of things, I'm most known for my book Meat, which is set on a factory farm. And it's I mean it's the book that made me turn vegan. So I'd been vegetarian for about 15 years, and I was sitting there thinking, I was looking at Stephen King and thinking, well, how does he write his books? He comes up with something that he knows people are scared of, whether it's clowns, whether it's the dark, whatever it is, he'll identify something that people are scared of and then kind of amplify that. And obviously, me being vegetarian at the time, I was like, well, nobody likes factory farms. Even people who, love eating meat all agree like factory farms aren't very nice places. So I thought, okay, I'll set a horror novel there. And yeah, then the research I did to go into that ended up turning me vegan because I was like, wow, this is kind of worse than I thought it was going to be. So, but yeah, those are probably the sort of the 2 things I'm mostly known for is my horror and probably Meat in particular, and then the Lightfold mystery series.
Love that. What inspired you to write your books?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And again, this comes back to me writing across a bunch of different genres. And it's because I read a bunch of different genres. So I'm very much one of those authors who writes books that they would like to read themselves, which is good in a way and it's bad in a way. Because as I say, I read all sorts of different stuff. And it leads to not having like a singular focus. I'm not like, again, going back to Stephen King as an example, where he's just known for just doing horror. I love reading horror, but again, I love reading cozy mystery. I love a bit of nonfiction here and there, like science fiction and fantasy. So, so it makes it difficult for from a marketing point of view to sort of say I write this kind of book. But yeah, that's pretty much what drives me is I write stories that I would want to read. And again, and I think most writers are the same. I have so many ideas kind of floating around in my head that it's always that kind of a case of, okay, well, I'm going to work on whichever one kind of needs to be told the most. And I think that's what keeps me going because there's always something there. And this comes back, the idea of like writer's block. And my tip for other writers who suffer from writer's block, if you've always got about 10 different projects on the go, or at least have a bunch of different ideas, that's what I do. Basically, if I get stuck on one book, is I switch over to something else and I'll write a short story or I'll do whatever. And then, by the time you go back to working on that book, it's normally sort of sorted itself out in your head. As you're falling asleep, you've come up with a solution or whatever it might be. So, so that's kind of what drives me, just having so many different ideas and so many different stories I want to tell.
Love that. When you were writing your books, who were you thinking of when it comes to who your books are for?
Yeah. Well, again, similar kind of myself, and then kind of people like me, but it does vary from story to story. I mean, again, with Meat, for example, that my goal with that is kind of a book for, I guess, anyone who's interested in horror, but it's also for people who, I guess, are interested in where their food comes from. And I've always said that's kind of my goal with it. Like, I don't want people to think of it as being like a vegan propaganda novel or whatever, the point is, and I think this is what authors, when authors do a good job of kind of engaging readers, it's usually when they ask them some sort of question. And even actually with my other books, with the more techie stuff, it's generally asking a question of, well, is this a good thing? Like, is Tinder a good thing for society? Well, I'm not going to tell you it is or it isn't, but I want to ask the question and then kind of almost lay out the arguments for and against within the novel, so the reader can make their own decisions. And I think that's kind of, I guess that's what I try and do, is my books are for people who like books that are going to ask them questions without necessarily giving them the answers. And again, that comes back to what I personally enjoy as a reader. Some of my favorite books are ones where the author asks some sort of question, and then you have to decide, well, how would you react in that situation? Would you do the thing that's morally right, or would you go for the thing that sort of benefits you the most, or whatever it might be? So because that's something that I love in books that I read, I think that's something that I've kind of put in my books for other people.
Love that. How long have you been writing, and what made you really sit down and start?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So the first ever like writing I did, I mean, I mentioned earlier, I'm a musician. I'm not like, I don't know, I'm incredible or whatever. I write some songs and I have like a band, and we play sort of locally and whatnot. I'm aware enough of my limitations to know I'm never going to be a rock star, which is probably why I went into writing, to be honest, because I was like, I think I'm better at the writing than the performing, maybe. But yeah, when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, I used to write songs it was literally, most of them were like rip-offs of songs that were in the charts at the time. So I remember one of them was, I did a version of Earth Song by Michael Jackson, which was about me and my friend getting bullied at school. But yeah, I have like, I still have a load of MP3s actually of these old songs that I wrote. But that's how it really all started. My dad was in a band as well, which I think helped. So I was always surrounded by music, and I used to write these, like, again, not very good songs. I was 6, 7 years old or whatever. Sort of fast forward to when I was about 14, I picked up guitar and started playing guitar, and I started writing songs from there. And they were much more, I mean, they still aren't amazing songs, but they are at least longer than 40 seconds long or whatever. But yeah, so I started writing kind of songs from there, and then songs very naturally went into poetry. I also started keeping a journal. And then when I was about 17, 18, I started writing my first novel. It's sort of never really seen the light of day. I have actually looked back at it recently, and it's so bad that it's kind of unsalvageable. Otherwise, I would be looking at trying to reissue it or something. But really, that's when I, again, sort of 17, 18, I was at college over here in the UK, which I guess is equivalent to like you being like a senior in high school. So we have like, we finish school at 16 to 18. You can either stay on at school or you can go to college. And then 18 to 21 is university, which I know is college in America. It's confusing how we do all that. But yeah, so I was kind of there at our college, and I was studying computing, because computing was always something I was quite good at. And I'd applied to study web development at university, but I was spending all of my time at college writing this novel, and I was trying to make it look as though I was taking notes while the teacher was talking, but I was actually sitting there writing my novel. And it kind of made me realize, well, if I'm doing this, what's the point of me going to uni to study web development when it's clear that like my passion lies in writing? So kind of last minute, really, I switched over to studying creative writing, and haven't really looked back since. So yeah, just been writing pretty much non-stop and doing everything I can to kind of make it my career, I suppose.
Love that. What is your schedule like when you are writing a book?
Oh, well, well, it's weird. I have a schedule and I also don't. So I have this like obsessive, because I don't want to say OCD, because I think that's like, I'm undiagnosed OCD. I have my obsessive ways. I'm sure we all do, but my schedule is that I actually call it the schedule. And basically I separate time into 3 areas. So I have like computer stuff, writing stuff, tidying stuff, and I kind of loop around on those. So I'll spend like 10 minutes sitting on my computer doing whatever needs to be done there, you know, responding to emails, all of that stuff. 10 minutes tidying, which is just, again, cleaning the house, making food, doing whatever kind of goes along on non-computery stuff, I guess. And then 10 minutes of writing. And I'll kind of loop around and do that over and over again. And I find that helps, because otherwise what happens is I over obsess on one thing. So I'll find, oh yeah, I've done all of my computer stuff, but I haven't tidied the house and I haven't done any writing, or I've spent the entire day writing and the house is a pigsty and, you know, I haven't made any food. So I find that kind of helps me to make sure that I am doing a little bit of everything. With that said, when it actually comes to writing like a novel, like I've seen, say, I think Stephen King is one who says you should always try and write 1,000 words a day of the book that you're working on. That's something I really wish I was able to do. But because as well, I have so many other writing projects, like I keep my journal, I review all of the books that I read. Quite often I'll be asked to do, you know, like an interview on a blog or something. And so in that case, I've got to write my responses to the interview questions. So yeah, I wouldn't say when I'm working on a book, which is pretty much all the time, I'm normally not writing it every day. It's normally sort of, you know, in little bursts. So maybe I'll have a good weekend and I'll write 5,000-6,000 words. Then I'll probably do like 800 words over the next 5 days, and then maybe 1,000 on the Saturday. And so it kind of comes in like dribs and drabs, I suppose, which is sort of a challenge. But then that's where editing comes in, and why editing is super important, because that's really where it irons out any of those bits that do come from, again, like leaving a sentence mid-flow or whatever, and then you come back and the paragraph changes direction and all of this stuff. You're able to kind of solve that with a good editor.
Love that. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
I don't know. I don't know if I need anything. I mean, I am like a veteran multitasker, so I'm not one of those people who needs total silence to write. In fact, it puts me off if I'm in total silence. So I almost always have, I mean, you kind of can't see where you're talking to me here. So I'm on my laptop here talking to you. I have my computer is behind that, my desktop with 2 screens. I have a Mac over there. And normally I've got on my Mac, there's normally something playing. It's normally YouTube. I watch quite a lot of BookTube on there, which is just like content creators talking about the books they read. Partly because, again, it's really good background noise. And then suddenly I'll zone in because I'll hear them talking about a book I've read, and I'll be like, okay, I want to hear what they've made of The Exorcist or whatever. But yeah, so I've generally got something happening on that screen that I'm just kind of listening to. And then the great thing about having the 2 screens is I'll have on my left-hand side, you know, my document I'm writing, and on my right-hand side, I can have any research. So again, let's say I'm working on a mystery novel and I'm trying to look up, you know, a classic one here is how long does it take for chloroform to take effect? Because everyone thinks that you just go up behind somebody and put a rag over their mouth and they just collapse. And it turns out it takes like 3 or 4 minutes for it to take effect. It's really not easy to chloroform somebody. And they always show it wrong in all of the movies. But yeah, so there's always like something like I've looked up and I'm like, okay, I'll keep that up there so I can keep referring back to it. Again, another example is when I'm doing some of the more of the technological stuff or whatever, I want to try and make sure I've got the details right. It's actually kind of a challenge because, again, I want to ask, when it comes to the technological stuff, these more sort of sweeping questions about, you know, is social networking good for us? And how has it affected our society? I'd want to ask that rather than like, is Twitter any good? You know, because for a start, you never know what's going to happen to Twitter. I mean, again, Elon Musk bought it not long ago. You could close it down tomorrow. We have no idea. So I don't really like name checking specific technological tools, but I do want to ask those sort of wider questions. And actually, with the mysteries, it's a really good way to do that, because it, you know, a lot of these questions like when was the last time you thought about your digital identity, and how easy it is for somebody to maybe clone you and pretend to be you and stuff. A mystery is the perfect kind of story to ask those kind of questions, because it can be a part of the plot rather than, you know, just seeming as though it's been forced in somehow, I guess. So, but yeah, in terms of what I need to write, it's pretty much, I'd like to have 2 screens and YouTube on in the background. At a pinch, I can sit down and write something in my notebook, you know. So I'm not too fussy.
Love that. What is your favorite writing snack or drink?
Oh, well, at the moment, I've got an energy drink. I drink a lot of Monster Energy. When I used to work back in the day, I used to work in an office. I used to work at a marketing agency. This comes back to what I was talking to earlier, actually, about trying to make a career out of writing. So I got into marketing because it was social media marketing. There was a bit of writing involved in there. And like later, I went full time just as a freelance writer, so I could spend more time writing. But when I was in an office, it was coffee, and I had this pretty much a system where it was like every 45 minutes, I'd get up, I'd nip to the bathroom, I'd make a coffee, and I'd go for a cigarette. I've quit smoking since then, and I don't drink anywhere near as much coffee. I used to drink probably 10, 12 cups of coffee a day. It was insane. So these days, it's pretty much, so again, I have the Monster Energy. I normally have one of those sort of not as soon as I wake up, but as I'm sort of getting ready to settle down for my day. And then snack wise, I don't know really. Again, because I'm vegan, anything vegan. I do have over here actually, which I've been snacking on lately. These are like KP, they're salt and vinegar flavored peanuts, and they're delicious. The normal peanuts just are quite boring, but anything I love salt and vinegar, so salt and vinegar crisps. There's a salt and vinegar popcorn by a company called Love Corn. That's amazing as well. Yeah. But normally, to be honest, as long as I've got a drink, I'm happy. I don't need snacks too much, just the drinks.
Love that. What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
A bit of everything. I am kind of a weirdly, again, I have like my weird obsessions. So what I do, I don't tend to read a lot of different authors. What I do is I find authors I like and I read everything they've ever done. So some of those have taken like a long time. So Agatha Christie is one of those. Even she's got some under a pen name called Mary Westmacott. So I think she had about 70 odd books, but I've read all of hers. I've read most of Terry Pratchett, most of Stephen King. And again, those are sort of 60, 70 plus books by each of those. Lately, the main two I'm reading at the moment, I have lots of Arthur C. Clarke and lots of Daphne du Maurier, which are totally different kind of authors. You got Arthur C. Clarke, who's like one of the godfathers of sci-fi. And then du Maurier, I mean, depending upon what she's writing, but she's, I guess, like classic, like almost thriller, like psychological thriller style at times, but then some of her stuff is like historical fiction as well. And that's literally come from, again, I know these are authors whose work I enjoy. So I keep an eye on eBay for like job lots of people selling, 10 Daphne du Maurier books at the same time, because you can get them quite cheap doing that. But yeah, so I mean, what in terms of what I enjoy the most, if I had the choice of anything, it would probably be a Stephen King book. I think that's probably what I would go for. And I'm kind of having to limit myself with those because I'm running out of them, and I don't want to tick them all off, because then I'll have nothing new to read. And I don't often do rereads as well. So yeah, I very occasionally I will reread via audiobook, but mostly there's so much stuff on my list that I'm always looking ahead to, like, what my next read is going to be.
I love that. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
Uh, well, I don't know it. I don't know. It's kind of a hard one to quantify. I think because I've wanted to be a writer for so long. What I will say, that the answer that comes to mind to this would be Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials trilogy. So it's Northern Lights. It was the Golden Compass in the US, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. So those are the books that made me fall in love with reading. It was about the time I'm kind of the generation where I was at the perfect age for when the Harry Potter books were coming out. I mean, I think when Deathly Hallows came out, I was about 17, 18. So I pretty much like aged alongside Harry for the last few books. And my generation, and like people of my age, and like specifically people that were in my year at school and stuff, everybody loves Harry Potter. I guess we're the elder millennials, so that's our like cliche. We loved Harry Potter, and then everyone kind of came after us, is like, why are you all obsessed with Harry Potter? But as much as I did enjoy Harry Potter, it was the Philip Pullman books. Those were my Harry Potter. So those were the books that made me fall in love with reading. I read them again and again and again. I actually have a tattoo. I don't know if you can see it. It's an armored bear from Northern Lights. So it's Yorick Burnison, because they just meant so much to me. So I think, again, I don't know if there's any specific books or authors that made me want to become a writer, but it's certainly the Philip Pullman, His Dark Materials trilogy. They came along, again, just at the right time. I think I read the first one when I was maybe 10 or 11, which is similar to the age of the main character. And I remember I was off school sick as well, so my grandparents were looking after me, and they took the book out from the library, and I just devoured it and absolutely loved it. And because I was that kind of age as well, it's kind of one of those books where there's layers to it. So I kept rereading it, and every time I reread it, I discovered something new to it. And that really showed me like how magical books can be. And that's really what made me become, a hardcore reader. And I think wanting to be a writer is probably just an extension of that,
Love that. What books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
Yeah, again, it would be that Philip Pullman trilogy would be the all-time favorite. He also had a Sally Lockhart series, which was sort of set in Victorian London. That was really good. I mean, when I think back to my I guess not my the first books, because I don't remember the first books I used to enjoy reading, but I know from my family I used to like the Very Hungry Caterpillar. Apparently there was a book called the Hairy McClary. It was Hairy McClary from Donaldson's Dairy. I don't remember these books at all, but it's about a dog apparently, and my mum says I used to love those books, and I'm like, I have no idea. I've never come across them since, and I don't remember them at all. I think there was a Dilly the Dinosaur series I used to like as well. That rings a bell somewhere. But from when I sort of started really enjoying reading, I remember I used to really like the Horrible Histories series by Terry Deary. So those were, again, non-fiction about various, you have the Cutthroat Celts, the Vicious Vikings, and things like that. So I quite like those. I liked R.L. Stein's Goosebumps series, quite a lot of Roald Dahl. There was some of them I missed though, like Matilda. I never actually read Matilda until I was in my 20s. I'd seen the movie, but I'd never kind of read the book. So some of them sort of passed me by somehow. But yeah, those are probably the main ones I remember sort of thinking back to as a kid.
Love that. On the opposite side of that, now as an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you automatically grab it?
Yeah, well, Stephen King is up there. So actually, I will say I looked up recently. I think it was on Goodreads a while ago. I think they've taken it away now, but you used to be able to see your most read authors. And I'd jotted it down at some point when you were able to see that. And I was looking at that recently, and so 8 of the 10 of them are actually dead. So the only ones who are still alive in my 10 most read authors are Stephen King and R.L. Stein, who is the guy who wrote Goosebumps. And to be honest, if a new Goosebumps book came out, I don't think I particularly rush to buy it. I might get it eventually, but again, I'm not really the target audience. But yeah, certainly Stephen King, he's kind of an auto buy. And then I suppose for me, again, with most of them being dead, it's less that there are authors who are an auto buy when they come out with something new. And again, it's authors where I want to read everything they've ever done. And so the classic ones there, I mean, my top favorite authors of all time, I would say Agatha Christie is up there. We've got Stephen King, Charles Bukowski in terms of poetry and some of his nonfiction, although he wasn't a very nice person. Terry Pratchett, definitely. Who else? I mean, Roald Dahl probably is up there as well. And Philip Pullman, Graham Greene is one of my favorites as well. And I've been reading a lot of Isaac Asimov recently as well. And which is interesting because I think he has more books than anyone else I've come across. He has 300 or 400 or something for me to slowly work my way through. So yeah, and then actually I suppose when it does come to auto buy authors, I was just trying to see if there's any up on my shelves there, but most of them would actually be indie authors who I follow. So for example, there's a guy called Charles Heathcote. He's got this series following a cantankerous old couple called Doris and Harold. And he's northern from the UK, northern England. So it has a very specific, it's kind of a regional sense of humor, but I really enjoy it. And he's got some mysteries out. So I always read whenever he has a new book out. And there's probably between half a dozen and a dozen, again, sort of independent authors like that who, whenever they have a new book out, I'll order it as a priority.
Love that. What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
I don't know, just try and find time for it. I think try and find times and places where you can dedicate a bit of time to it. Everyone has different ways and styles of reading, you know. So some people will read just before bed. Some people, I read quite a lot while on the move. So again, when I had my office job, I had to get a bus to and from work. So I read about an hour each day just on the bus. I still love reading while traveling. Also audiobooks are your friend, because you can, you know, pop an audiobook on while you're kind of cleaning the house, or you know, on the treadmill, or whatever it is. So yeah, and that's how, because people ask me quite a lot, like, how do I read so much? And it is just that I build in time. You know, I build in breaks every hour or so. I'll have a 5-10 minute break where I'll just read for a bit, like have a quick cup of tea or whatever it is. And so I think it's just finding time for it. And that's generally why I find as well, like, people who do try and read, and then they, you know, they'll get a third of the way through a book, and then they'll forget where they were at the book, and then they don't want to start it again. They just kind of give up. The other thing, I suppose, and this is a piece of advice to everybody, is just don't be afraid to DNF a book, which means did not finish. If you're not enjoying a book, don't force yourself to keep reading it. I think a lot of people do that, and certainly you kind of have to do that when you're studying like English literature or something and you have required reading. But when you're reading, you know, reading's supposed to be fun. So if you're not enjoying a book, get rid of it, you know. Even if it's one of mine, I give you permission, stop reading my book and read something you enjoy.
Of that. On the opposite side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
Stick at it, I think. Yeah, stick at it and don't procrastinate. So it's very easy. And one of the things that I do is I do some coaching. And as part of that, like, we have a daily Q&A with some other coaches. So I do the Monday one and the Thursday one. And as much as I love seeing the same faces each week, part of me is like, you know, you could skip a call every now and then and spend that hour writing instead, you know. And I think it's very easy to do that when you're just starting out as an author. You want to study everything. You want to read every blog post there is about it. You want to listen to every webinar. You want to listen to every podcast. And it's great, and you'll learn a lot. But at the end of the day, the best way to learn is by putting words down on the page. So I think that would be my main piece of advice, is just make sure that you are actually kind of progressing, getting words down. And then the other thing that kind of to sit alongside that, find a good editor. Because basically what you'll find well, to be honest, I don't know a single writer who writes the first draft of their book, sits down and looks at it and goes, yes, this is brilliant. Like, every time I finish, I finish and I type the last word or whatever, and I have to read back through it anyway before I send it to my editor. And I'm always like, this is garbage. Like, I don't think I can share this. This is so bad. And then it goes off to the editor, and we have a few rounds of editing and rewrites and whatnot. And by the end, I'm like, oh, actually, this is really good again. You know, it's been polished. But yeah, I think a lot of first-time writers will either they'll finish that first draft and they'll just publish it. Especially if they've done something like NaNoWriMo, they'll just finish their first draft and they'll just publish it, which is always a big no-no. You always want to get it edited. Or they'll finish the first draft and they'll read back through it and think it's garbage and just lose heart and not progress with it. So just trust the process, but make sure you work with a good editor. And then, you know, it's just all about making sure that the final thing's the best it can be. You know, it's kind of like, if you want to think about it as like, you've done all this hard work, you've built a house from the ground up, you know, but you want to decorate it before you move in, or before you sell it, or before you do anything with it, because that's going to just double the value, you know. So yeah, that's how I would think of it. And again, just stick at it. It takes a long time, but it's you know, it's rewarding. It never stops being rewarding. Like, even the other day, I got a book in the post that I'd edited, and it's just super exciting to hold a book in your hands that you've worked on, even when you haven't written it. And again, I mean, I'm probably about 12 books of my own now, and then I've probably worked on 20, 30 more. And it's still just, every time I get to hold one in my hands, it's you can't describe that feeling, you know.
Love that. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
Ooh. I don't know if there is anything, because I'm generally quite open, you know. So I don't know if there is anything in particular, because it's more, if anything, like I would talk about it. I mean, I guess one could be, and this is probably more from real life than anything, but so I suffer from anxiety disorder. I have mixed depression and anxiety, but it tends to be the anxiety that's worse. And again, I think because people are so used to, again, I'm chatting to you now, and I do a lot of this coaching, and like I put myself in these situations. One of them was like I ended up speaking at a conference in Italy, and I had to fly out to Italy by myself and speak at this conference. And I had like the worst anxiety the entire time, and I managed to battle through it all, and nobody had any idea. But afterwards, I was like, why did I do that? I didn't even want to do that. I just did it to, I guess, to prove to myself that I could. But yeah, so it's the same, like with a lot of, a lot doing stuff like this. I mean, I make YouTube videos. Again, I play my music with my band or perform at open mic nights and things. And so people tend to be surprised when they find out that I have anxiety, but it's in part like it's because I refuse to let it beat me. And also because the kind of anxiety I have, like mine generally is more like health anxiety and death anxiety. So actually, like, again, standing up on a stage in front of people isn't too bad. It doesn't particularly trigger my anxiety. What does trigger my anxiety is if I suddenly feel lightheaded because I start to think, oh my God, I'm going to pass out and it's something really bad. And so yeah, but that's probably the thing that I get the most, like, sort of surprise from people when they find that out, especially, again, like people who I've never met before who see me performing on a stage and then they find out I have anxiety. They kind of struggle to tie the two of those together,
Love that. Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
So I was thinking about this because I know at the start of the call you said you were going to ask this towards the end, and I can't think of anything in particular. I mean, I would say thank you very much for making the time to chat to me. It's been a real pleasure just to come on and just to have a little bit of a chat. It's funny as well because, as I say, I do a radio show of my own, so it's normally the other way around, and I'm chatting to other people about sort of their creative pursuits, which I love doing as well. But it's been a little while since I've just sort of talked about my own stuff. Yeah, so thanks to you for having me. Thank you to everyone who sort of tuned in and listened as well. The only other thing I would say is, do feel free to reach out to me and say hello. I don't bite, and I'm more than happy to have a chat to people. I also, I mean, I like all authors. I mean, we like thrive on reviews and whatnot. So if you do pick up one of my books, please do leave a review. I am one of those authors where I don't care if you hated it. If you hate it, I would still prefer you to leave a review. This is partly because of my marketing background. There are studies that show the odd negative review actually helps in general anyway, because it makes the positive one seem more realistic. But also, there's quite often places where I can learn from negative feedback and whatnot as well. So I encourage people to just leave their honest thoughts, whether they loved the book or they hated it. And don't worry, I'm not going to be one of those weird authors like Kathleen Hale. If you Google Kathleen Hale, she is one of those weird authors who did some crazy stuff and showed up at somebody's house after they left a negative review and stuff. I'm not going to do that.
Love that. Well, thank you so much. Where's the best place for readers to find your book? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option for any of them? And the best place to connect with you?
Yeah. So yeah, I totally can do signed copies. Basically, obviously, all my books are on Amazon in paperback and ebook formats. But I have a website, so danecobain.com. That's pretty much got everything linked to it. DaneCobain.com. And also there are some handy little links. So if you put danecobain.com/Amazon or danecobain.com .com/Goodreads, that will automatically forward you to my Amazon author page or my Goodreads page where you can see all of the books. Pretty much every social networking site I'm just at Dane Cobain on. Facebook, I'm Dane Cobain Music because I made the mistake of Dane Cobain was just my profile, so then I couldn't have it for my page. And TikTok, some random person is Dane Cobain on TikTok. I don't know why. I don't know who they are. So I have to be Dane John Cobain with my middle name there. But yes, I'm on there. But drop me a message on any social networking site if you want signed copies. I do them in the UK, they're normally, I think, $8.99, including postage. They're a little bit more, so they're probably about $15 including international postage. But you get your signed copy and you get a free pen and bookmark with it as well. But otherwise, you can always do Amazon.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on today. We're so grateful we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those links in the show notes. That way everyone can find you. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.